What if the person you loved most in the world, the one you buried with your own hands, somehow found a way to reach you from beyond the grave? Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If this story grabs your heart the way I know it will, please like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to Voices of Auntie Belle. We're telling stories that matter, stories that touch the deepest parts of who we are. And I want to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. We absolutely love hearing from you. Now, let me tell you about Marina. Marina was a woman who knew exactly what it meant to live with an empty chair at the dinner table. For 15 years, she had woken up every single morning knowing that her son would never walk through her front door again. His name was Marcus, and he was 17 years old when a drunk driver took him away from her on a rainy Tuesday evening in October. That was 15 years ago. Marina didn't cry anymore. That's what people didn't understand about grief that old. It wasn't that the pain went away. It was that it became part of your bones, part of the way you breathed, part of the way you moved through the world. She carried Marcus with her everywhere, not in her heart exactly, but in her hands when she made his favorite meal, in her throat when she tried to sing the songs he loved, in her feet when she walked to his grave every single Wednesday without fail. She had kept his room exactly as he left it. His gaming console sat on the desk, collecting dust. His sneakers, the expensive ones he saved up for 3 months to buy, sat by the window where he always kicked them off. His posters still hung on the walls, boy bands and athletes he had loved back when the world made sense. Nobody ever went in there except Marina, and she went in there almost every day, just to sit on the edge of his bed and remember what it felt like to hear him laugh. But the strangest thing Marcus left behind was his phone. An old Nokia, the kind people didn't use anymore. It was ancient technology even back then, but Marcus had been stubborn about keeping it. He said it lasted forever, that you could throw it off a cliff and it would still work. When he died, Marina did something that most people thought was insane. She put that phone in the casket with him. She put it right in his hands and told the funeral director not to touch it, that it needed to go down into the ground with her boy. The funeral director had tried to talk her out of it. What good would a phone do him where he was going? But Marina had been firm. You didn't say no to a mother burying her only child. You just didn't do that. So the phone went down into the earth along with Marcus, tucked into his cold hands like maybe somehow, in some strange way nobody could explain, he might need it. People thought Marina was strange after that. They would see her at the grocery store and whisper. They would invite her to coffee and she would sit there while they tried to convince her to move on, to stop visiting the grave so much, to maybe get rid of his room, to try to have another child. Marina would nod and smile and say nothing. What could she say? That she felt Marcus sometimes, especially late at night? That she would wake up at exactly 3 in the morning for no reason at all, her heart pounding, like something was calling to her? That sometimes she could swear she smelled his cologne even though she had never worn it and he was 15 years in the ground? She never told anyone about these things. Not her sister who kept trying to set her up with a man from her church. Not her ex-husband Darius, who had loved Marcus just as much as she did but had loved him differently, had tried to move forward, had tried to build a new life. The grief had split them apart like an axe through wood. Some people could grieve together. They had been the kind who could only grieve alone. Marina worked as a librarian at the public library downtown. She had been working there for 23 years. Books were safe. Books didn't judge. Books understood that sometimes people needed to disappear into other worlds because this world hurt too much. She would shelve books and help people find what they were looking for, and inside her head she was always thinking about Marcus. What would he be doing now if he were alive? He would be 32 years old. He would probably have a job. Maybe he would have a girlfriend. Maybe there would be grandchildren. Maybe. The maybes were worse than the facts. The night before everything changed, Marina had that dream again. It was the dream she had been having for months now, getting more vivid and more real each time. She was walking through darkness, deep darkness, the kind where you can't see your own hands in front of your face. And she could hear him calling. His voice was small and scared and very far away. He kept saying the same thing over and over. He kept saying, "Mom, where are you? Mom, I'm scared. Mom, it's so dark. Where did you go?" She always tried to reach toward his voice in the dream, but her legs wouldn't work right. She was trying to run but she was moving in slow motion, the way you move underwater, and his voice kept getting fainter and fainter. She would wake up gasping, her heart racing, her sheets soaked with sweat. Every single time this happened, she would get out of bed and go into Marcus's room and sit in the dark, just sitting there until her breathing slowed down and she could convince herself it was only a dream. This night was no different. Marina woke at 3 in the morning. Exactly 3, the time she always woke, her whole body shaking. She lay there in the darkness of her bedroom, trying to catch her breath, trying to separate the dream from reality. The house was so quiet. This old house was always quiet now. It creaked sometimes, settling into itself like an old person getting comfortable. She could hear the refrigerator humming down in the kitchen. She could hear the clock on the wall ticking away the seconds, counting down to something, though she didn't know what. She had stopped trying to sleep after these dreams. There was no point. Sleep wouldn't come back. So she got up and put on her robe, the soft blue one that Marcus had given her for her birthday 7 years before he died. She went downstairs to make tea. She did this almost every time she woke up this way. The warm cup in her hands, the hot steam rising up into her face, these small things helped her feel less alone in the darkness. She was sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the street beyond, when it happened. At first she thought it was a sound from the television someone was watching in the neighborhood. But then she realized the television wasn't even on. The sound was coming from upstairs. It was a ringing sound. A phone ringing. Her landline phone, the old one that sat on the table next to her bed. Marina's heart started to race. Nobody called her at 3 in the morning. Nobody. She didn't have friends who would do that. Her sister knew better. Darius was long remarried and out of her life. Wrong numbers happened sometimes, but not at 3 in the morning. Not ever. She climbed the stairs slowly, her hand on the railing, and made her way to her bedroom. The phone was still ringing. She could see the small light blinking on it in the darkness. She reached out and picked it up. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "Hello," she whispered. There was a pause. A long pause. And then she heard breathing. And then she heard a voice. A voice she would recognize anywhere in the world, in any lifetime. It was her son. It was Marcus. But that was impossible. That was completely and utterly impossible. Marina's hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. It was young, scared, and exactly how she remembered it from all those years ago. "Mom?" the voice said. "Mom, where am I? It's completely dark in here. Mom, I can't see anything. I'm scared." Marina tried to speak but no words came out. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The phone nearly slipped from her fingers. She had to grip it tighter to keep from dropping it. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Her mind was playing tricks on her. She was having a breakdown. She was finally, after all these years, losing her mind. "Mom? Mom, answer me. Please answer me. I can hear you breathing. Are you there?" It was Marcus's voice. Not a ghost voice. Not something ethereal or strange. It was the exact voice she remembered, complete with a slight lisp he had when he got nervous, the way he said certain words. 15 years. 15 years and she could still hear every inflection, every tone. Marcus?" she managed to get out. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone very far away and very old. "Mom." The relief in his voice was so overwhelming it made her legs go weak. She had to sit down on the edge of the bed. "Mom, thank God. I don't know where I am. It's dark. It's so dark I can't see anything. Why is it so dark? What's happening? Where are you? Why can't I move?" Marina's mind was racing. This was a prank. It had to be a prank. Someone cruel, someone with a twisted sense of humor, had recorded Marcus's voice from somewhere. She had put videos of him online years ago when she was trying to memorialize him. Someone had stolen his voice and was using it to hurt her. That had to be it. That made more sense than anything else. But her heart didn't believe it. Her heart was jumping around in her chest like a caged bird. "Honey, listen to me," she said, her voice steadier now. "Where are you? Tell me exactly where you are." "I don't know," Marcus said, and she could hear the panic rising in his voice. "I don't know where I am. It's dark and it smells like dirt." "Mom, why does it smell like dirt?" "I'm scared. I'm really scared. How long have I been here? It feels like a long time but also like no time at all. I can't remember. Why can't I remember?" Marina stood up suddenly. Her whole body was shaking now. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. What's the last thing you remember? Tell me the last thing you remember before you woke up in the dark. There was a pause. A long pause where Marina could only hear breathing and something that sounded like rustling, like movement in that darkness he kept talking about. I remember rain, Marcus said finally. I remember rain on the windshield. I remember you were mad at me because I borrowed your car without asking. I remember you said I was irresponsible and that I needed to grow up. I remember you were yelling at me when I left the house. And then what? Marina pressed. She was standing at her bedroom window now, looking out at the street below, looking at the houses of people who were sleeping peacefully while her world was turning upside down. And then everything went white, Marcus said. It was like a flash of white light and then pain, so much pain, and then nothing. And now I'm here. In the dark. And I can't move and I'm cold and I don't understand. Mom, I don't understand. What happened? Marina's legs gave out and she sank to the floor. Her back was against the window. The cold glass pressed against her spine. The accident. He was describing the accident. The police had told her it happened so fast that he probably didn't feel anything, but she had never believed them. She had always wondered what those last moments were like for him. And now her dead son was describing them to her across what should have been an uncrossable distance. Marcus, she whispered. Baby, what year do you think it is? What do you mean what year? It's 2009. It's October 2009. It's just before Halloween. Why are you asking me that? Marina closed her eyes. Her son had been dead for 15 years. It was 2024 now. 15 years had passed. She had aged 15 years. Her hair had turned gray. Her face had wrinkled. Her body had changed. And Marcus, wherever he was, seemed to think it was still 2009, the night of the accident. Marcus, I need you to listen to me, she said, and her voice was calm now. Suddenly calm in the way that comes when you accept that something impossible is happening and there's nothing left to do but move forward. I'm going to come to you. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to find you. I promise you. You're not alone. You're not going to be alone in the dark anymore. Do you hear me? Mom, you're scaring me, Marcus said. You sound scared. I am scared, Marina admitted. But I'm also here. And I'm not going anywhere. Just hold on. Just hold on and stay on the phone with me, okay? Stay on the phone with me and tell me everything you can remember about where you are. As Marcus began to describe the darkness around him, the way it felt, the strange sensations in his body, Marina was already moving. She was putting on clothes. She was grabbing her car keys. She was thinking about the cemetery, about Cypress Grove Memorial Park where she visited every single Wednesday. She was thinking about the grave they had dug for Marcus, about the casket they had lowered into the ground, about the phone she had placed in his cold hands. She was thinking about the impossible. I'm on my way, she told her son. Just keep talking to me. Tell me everything. Tell me you're still there. I'm here, Marcus said. His voice was getting stronger now, less panicked. I'm right here, Mom. And I can hear you. I can hear your voice and it's warm and it's the only thing that isn't cold right now. Don't hang up. Please don't hang up. I won't, Marina promised. I will never hang up. She grabbed her purse and her jacket and she headed for the door. Her hands were moving but they didn't feel like her hands. Her body was acting but she felt like she was watching it from outside herself. This was shock. This had to be shock. But she didn't slow down. She didn't question it anymore. She just moved forward because her son needed her and for the first time in 15 years, her son needed her and that was impossible and real and true all at the same time. She called the cemetery as she drove. It was 3:30 in the morning. Nobody answered. She left a message that was probably incoherent. She called again. And again. Finally, at 3:45, someone picked up. It was Silas, the night watchman who had been working at Cypress Grove for almost as long as Marina had been visiting. Silas, Marina said, and her voice sounded like a stranger's voice, high and strange. Silas. It's Marina. The woman who visits on Wednesdays. I need you to do something for me. I need you to meet me at the cemetery. I need you to help me with something. It's important. It's the most important thing in the world. Silas had heard rumors about Marina, about her visits to her son's grave, about the way she talked to the headstone like someone was listening. He probably thought she was crazy. But he agreed anyway. Maybe because it was the middle of the night and something in her voice told him this was real. Maybe because everyone in a small town knew everyone else's stories and he knew hers. Marina drove through the empty streets. Marcus was still on the phone with her. He was telling her about the darkness, about how it felt like pressure all around him, about how he could feel his heart beating slowly, very slowly, almost like it was barely working at all. He was telling her things that didn't make medical sense, things that didn't make any kind of sense. But Marina listened to every word and she drove faster and faster toward the cemetery where her son had been buried 15 years ago. At 4 in the morning, she pulled through the iron gates of Cypress Grove Memorial Park. The headlights of her car cut through the darkness. The cemetery was beautiful in the moonlight, peaceful and quiet, the kind of place where the dead slept without disturbance. But not tonight. Tonight nothing was going to sleep. Silas was waiting for her by the front office, an old man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He had a shovel in his hands. He didn't ask many questions. "Show me," he said simply. Marina led him through the cemetery, walking between the headstones, guided by memory and by the sound of her son's breathing on the phone in her hand. They reached the grave. Marcus's grave. The headstone that read his name and his dates. Beloved son. Too young to understand why someone would write something like that on a stone. "We need to dig," Marina said. Silas looked at her. He didn't ask why. He just started digging. The shovel hit the earth with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire cemetery. Silas worked methodically, moving dirt aside in steady scoops. Marina stood nearby, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to her son breathe in the darkness beneath the ground. "Mom," Marcus said. "What's that sound?" "I hear something. It sounds like digging." "Someone's digging toward you," Marina said. "Someone's coming to help. Just hold on." She looked around the cemetery. The sky was still dark, that deep darkness just before dawn when the world feels like it's holding its breath. She thought about calling Darius, her ex-husband. She thought about calling someone, anyone, to tell them what was happening. But who would believe her? Who could possibly believe any of this? So she stood there alone with the old watchman and held the phone and listened to her dead son describe the pressure around him in the darkness. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of digging before Silas's shovel hit something solid. Wood. The casket. Marina's heart started beating so fast she thought it might break. Silas carefully cleared away the dirt around the top of the casket. His movements became gentler now, more respectful. This was someone's child in that box. He understood that. "We need more help," Silas said, looking at Marina. "We need to get this out of the ground. We need to be careful." Marina nodded and called 911. She didn't know what else to do. She told the dispatcher there was an emergency at the cemetery. She didn't tell them why. What would she say? That her son was calling from inside his grave? They would think she was mad. While they waited, Marina kept talking to Marcus. She told him about the past 15 years. She told him about the life she had lived without him, about how every day had hurt, about how she had kept his room exactly the same. She told him that she had loved him every single second of every single day. She didn't know if he understood. She didn't know if any of this made sense. But she kept talking because as long as she was talking, he was still with her. The police arrived first. Then an ambulance. The paramedics looked confused when they saw Marina standing at an open grave with a phone to her ear. They looked even more confused when Silas explained what was happening. But they helped anyway. Carefully, with straps and equipment, they began to lift the casket out of the earth. It was still dark. The casket was covered in dirt and moss. 15 years in the ground had marked it. But as they set it down on the grass, as they began to wipe away the dirt, Marina could see something that made her breath catch. The casket was sealed, but there was a small glow coming from inside. A faint, bluish glow. The phone. The Nokia phone she had buried with her son was still glowing after 15 years in the ground. "We need to open it," Marina said. Her voice was very calm now, the calmness of someone who has moved beyond shock into something else entirely. "We need to open it now." The paramedics exchanged looks. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I don't think that's a good idea. We should call the police and the hospital and open it, Marina said. It wasn't a question. It was a command from a mother who had been waiting 15 years for this moment. They opened it. What they found inside the casket was something that defied every law of nature, every rule of science, every understanding of how the human body works. Marcus's body was perfectly preserved. Not mummified, not skeletal, not decomposed in any way. He looked like he was sleeping. His skin was pale but intact. His hair was still dark and soft-looking. His clothes, the ones they had dressed him in for the funeral, were still pristine. And in his hands, still glowing with a faint blue light, was the old Nokia phone. One of the paramedics leaned forward and checked for a pulse. His face went white. "There's a pulse," he whispered. "There's a pulse." "How is there a pulse?" Marina's phone crackled. Marcus's voice came through, clearer now, less panicked. "Mom? The pressure is gone. The weight is lifting. I can feel air. I can feel something. What's happening? Where am I?" "You're with me," Marina said. "You're coming back to me." She heard a sound then, a sound that made her turn around. It was Darius, her ex-husband. He stood at the edge of the cemetery, having apparently been called by one of the police officers who knew him. He had aged too, just like Marina had. His hair was gray. His face was lined. But his eyes were the same, and right now they were filled with shock and confusion and something else, something desperate. "What's happening?" he asked. "What's going on here?" "Marcus called me," Marina said simply. "He called me from inside his grave and he asked for help. And we found him." Darius walked forward slowly, like he was moving through water. He looked into the casket and he saw what they all saw. His son. His son exactly as he remembered him, frozen in time, preserved in a way that science could not explain. And for the first time in 15 years, Darius began to cry. The ambulance rushed Marcus to the hospital. Marina rode with him, holding the old Nokia phone, listening to her son breathe through the connection. He kept asking questions. Where was he? What year was it? How much time had passed? Marina answered as best she could, but none of it seemed to make sense to either of them. At the hospital, they called in specialists. They called in a pathologist named Kai, who had been Marina's friend in college and had gone on to become one of the best in the field. Kai arrived within an hour, and when she saw the body, when she examined it, she said things that the doctors couldn't explain. "There's no decomposition," Kai said, running tests. "There's no tissue breakdown, no bacterial growth, nothing. It's like he's been in suspended animation. Like time has passed around him but not through him." "Can you wake him up?" Marina asked. "Can you bring him back?" Kai looked at her with an expression that mixed hope and fear in equal measure. "I don't know. No one knows. We're in territory that medicine doesn't have a map for. They tried everything. They ran 4 fluids. They stimulated his nervous system. Nothing worked." And then, late that night, as Marina sat holding her son's hand, the phone buzzed. A text message from the number that was connected to Marcus's old Nokia. It said 3 words. Water. Sunlight. Music. Marina looked at the hospital staff. "We need to get him outside. We need water and sunlight and music. He's telling us what he needs." They thought she was crazy. But Darius backed her up. Darius, who had barely spoken to her in 10 years, who had moved on and remarried and tried to leave his grief behind, stood beside his ex-wife and demanded that the hospital follow the instructions from a dead boy's phone. They moved Marcus to a room with a large window. They placed a small fountain in the room. And they brought a speaker and played all of Marcus's favorite songs. The music filled the room. It was music from 2009, the songs he had loved when he was alive, songs that Marina had memorized without meaning to. And then something began to happen. Marcus's fingers twitched. His breathing became deeper. His skin, pale before, began to flush with color. His eyes began to move beneath closed lids like he was dreaming. And as the sun rose through the window, as the water in the fountain bubbled and splashed, as the music played on and on, Marcus's body began to change. It was like watching time move in fast forward. Subtle changes at first, then more dramatic. His face began to change shape. The soft features of a 17-year-old boy began to shift and harden into the features of an adult man. His body, which had been preserved at 17, began to age. Not decay. Not deteriorate, but mature. It was as if he was living through the years all at once, the years he had missed, the years that had passed while he was in the darkness. By noon, the process slowed. By 1 in the afternoon, it stopped. And lying in that hospital bed, in the sunlight, with the music playing and the water fountain running, was a man. A 32-year-old man with Marcus's face but aged, marked by something that Marina couldn't quite name. He looked like Marcus. He looked like what Marcus would have become if he had lived. His eyes opened. They were the same eyes. The same kindness, the same intelligence, the same spark of life that Marina remembered. He looked at her and he started to cry. "Mom," he said. His voice was different now, deeper, but still unmistakably his voice. "I remember everything. I remember the darkness and I remember time, but it wasn't like time here. It was different. I was there but I was also learning, growing, understanding things. And I remember you. I remember that you loved me. I remember that you kept calling, and I heard you, and I followed your voice back." Marina couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She could only cry and hold her son's hand and feel the warmth of his skin, the reality of him, the impossible, miraculous reality of him. The hospital became a fortress of secrets after that day. Kai worked with Marina and Darius to keep what happened completely quiet. They created a story. A careful, believable story. Marcus had been in an accident years ago, they said, and had been in a coma this whole time in a private facility that nobody knew about. He had amnesia. He couldn't remember anything before the accident. That's why he didn't know what year it was, why he didn't understand the world around him. It was a story that explained everything without explaining anything. It was a story that nobody could prove was false. The media tried to investigate. There were whispers in the hospital, questions from nurses and doctors who knew something strange had happened. But Marina had money saved from decades of working, and money can keep secrets. Lawyers were hired. Documents were filed. By the time anyone could really ask serious questions, Marcus had been transferred to a private rehabilitation facility, and the official story had taken root. A young man recovering from a long coma. That was all anyone needed to know. Marcus struggled at first with the world he found himself in. He had been 17 years old when the accident happened in 2009. Now it was 2024 and he was living in the body of a 32-year-old man with a dead teenager's memories and 15 years of experiences. He had lived in a place that had no geography, no time, no rules that made any sense. The technology was strange to him. Smartphones were nothing like the phones he remembered. People were constantly looking at screens. The world had moved forward without him, and he had to learn it all again. But he had his mother. And he had his father. Darius had left his new wife within a month. He couldn't explain it to her. How could he? Instead, he moved into a small apartment near Marina and Marcus, and the three of them tried to figure out what it meant to be a family again. It was awkward and strange and sometimes painful, but it was also beautiful in ways that none of them could have predicted. Marcus got a job working with Marina at the library. He told people he was new to the area. He was quiet and kind and he had a strange way of seeing books, like each one was a door to somewhere important. People liked him. They didn't ask too many questions. And slowly, he began to understand this new world he had been born into. But there were other things. Stranger things. Things that Marcus couldn't explain and that Kai investigated quietly in her home lab. Marcus told them about the darkness he had been in. He said it wasn't empty. He said there were other people there. Other voices. Other souls trapped in that space between life and death. He said that when he heard his mother's voice calling to him, he realized that the barrier between the two worlds was thinner than anyone thought. He said that love was what had pulled him through. Love was the bridge. Kai found something in the casket when it was finally returned to the cemetery and resealed. She found a residue on the inside, something that didn't match any chemical compound in the database. It glowed faintly in the dark. It seemed to have some kind of consciousness to it, some kind of awareness. Kai studied it in secret for months, and the more she studied it, the more she became convinced that Marcus was telling the truth. That there was something in that grave, something that had preserved him, something that had allowed him to reach out to his mother across the years. One night, about 6 months after Marcus had come back, Marina asked him the question she had been afraid to ask since the beginning. "Are you really my son?" she asked. "Are you really Marcus? Or are you something else wearing his face?" Marcus looked at her for a long time. They were sitting in his old room, The room she had kept exactly the same. His old posters were still on the walls. His sneakers were still by the window. "I'm both," he said finally. "I'm Marcus and I'm not. I'm the boy you buried and I'm also someone new. I've lived years in that darkness, Mom. Years that don't add up to years the way you measure them. I've learned things. I've seen things. I've met other people who are trapped there, and I know what they need. I know how to help them." "How?" Marina asked, fear creeping into her voice. "How would you help them?" "I don't know yet," Marcus said. "But I know there are dark forces in that place. I know there are things that want to cross over into this world and cause harm. And I think maybe I'm supposed to be here now because I can help stop them. Because I understand both worlds. Because my mother loves me enough to call me back from the dead." Darius came into the room then. He had been listening from the hallway. He looked at his son, this man who had his face but carried the memories of something more, and he asked the question that was terrifying them all. "Will you ever have to go back? Will you ever have to leave us again?" Marcus stood up and hugged both his parents. He held them like he was making sure they were real. "I don't know," he said. "I hope not. I hope I can stay. But I also know that if there are people trapped in that darkness, people whose mothers are calling to them, I might have to help. I might have to be the bridge." The years that followed were strange and beautiful and painful all at once. Marcus lived his life as best he could. He and his mother and father grew closer. They traveled together. They laughed together. They grieved together for all the years they had lost. And sometimes, late at night, Marina would find Marcus staring out the window, his hand on the old Nokia phone that they had kept safe. She knew he was listening to something. She knew he was hearing voices from that other place. She knew her son was standing between two worlds, holding the line, keeping the darkness at bay. Other families began to experience strange things. People would get calls from dead loved ones. People would hear voices in the darkness. And somehow, these families found Marina. They found Marcus. They came looking for answers. And Marcus would listen to their stories and sometimes he would help. Sometimes he would tell them how to reach out to the people they had lost. Sometimes he would warn them about the dark things in that space, the things that shouldn't be let through. Kai became part of their secret circle, along with Silas the cemetery watchman, who knew the truth and who had begun to notice other graves where things were not quite right. The five of them became guardians of a mystery that nobody else could understand. They protected the secret of what had happened. They protected Marcus. And they worked together to understand the boundaries between life and death, between the possible and the impossible. One thing became clear to all of them. Love was stronger than death. Love could reach across any distance. Love could call someone back from the darkest places. A mother's love for her son had torn open the fabric of reality itself. It had brought her boy back to her. And now that boy stood between two worlds, using what he had learned in the darkness to help others find their way back to the light. Marina continued to work at the library. Every Wednesday, she still visited the cemetery, but now Marcus came with her. They would sit by his grave, the grave that had given him back to the world, and they would talk. Marina would tell him about her week. Marcus would tell her about the voices he heard, about the souls he was trying to help. And sometimes they would just sit in silence, grateful for the impossible miracle that had brought them back together. The question that haunted them all was simple. What lies beyond death? Is there really another world? Are our loved ones truly waiting for us in the darkness? Can we reach them? Can they reach us? And if the answer is yes, if love really is strong enough to bridge that gap, what does that mean for everyone walking this earth right now, carrying their own grief, their own loss, their own desperate hope that somehow, someway, they might hear from the person they love most in the world? Those answers remain a mystery. But Marina knows something now that she didn't know before. She knows that death is not the end. She knows that love is real and powerful and capable of impossible things. She knows that if you listen closely enough, late at night, when the world is quiet and the darkness is deep, you might just hear someone calling your name. You might just hear the voice of someone you thought was gone forever. And if you do, you should answer. You should answer because they might be calling from a place where they need your help. They might be calling because they're finally finding their way home. This is the story of Marina and Marcus. This is the story of a mother's love that refused to accept death. This is the story of what happens when the barriers between worlds grow thin, when the desperate reach of a grieving heart tears open the fabric of reality itself. And it's a story that reminds us of something we all need to remember. Love matters. Love is real. Love is the only thing strong enough to bridge the gap between life and death. If this story moved you, if it touched something deep inside you, I need you to do something right now. Share this story with someone you love. Don't just watch it and scroll away. Send it to the person who needs to hear it. Tell them about Marina and Marcus. Tell them about the power of love. Because maybe they're grieving too. Maybe they're carrying their own loss. Maybe they need to know that love is stronger than anything, even death itself. And please, subscribe to Voices of Auntie Belle. Like this video. Comment below and tell us your story. Have you ever felt connected to someone you've lost? Have you ever experienced something that defied explanation? We want to hear from you. This community is about sharing the stories that matter, the stories that touch our souls, the stories that remind us we're not alone. So tell me, right now in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you with family? Are you alone? Are you grieving? We love hearing from you. We love knowing that our stories are reaching people all over the world who are searching for meaning, searching for connection, searching for hope. That's what we do here on Voices of Auntie Belle. We tell the stories that matter. We keep the mysteries alive. We remind each other that there's always more to this world than what we can see. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting Marina and Marcus's story into your heart. Until next time, keep your heart open. Keep listening. Because sometimes if we're very quiet, we can hear the voices of the people we love calling to us across the distance. And maybe, just maybe, we can call back.